Alice Cooper and elected, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm happy to let you know that I've got Peter Maliaros on the phone right now. How you doing today, Pete?
Not bad, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. And you had sent Cheryl Lacey down to have a chat with me, but unfortunately, we couldn't coordinate it in the studio. But next time, we'll get her on again.
Sounds like a play, mate.
Yeah. And how's things going for you? How you going during election week and all that sort of stuff? Is it exciting?
Look, it is. It's my first time up.
Yep.
And I have to say the public have been really, really supportive. I think this is really going to be an interesting outcome. The election, what happens after this election?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
The polls are definitely showing there's a swing away from the majors.
Okay.
And definitely a swing towards the other.
Mm-hmm.
And personally, I believe that's as it should be.
Yeah, right.
But we'll have plenty of time to discuss.
Yeah. It's interesting times. And I think that unfortunately for the powers that have been powers that be that have been in charge,
yes,
no matter who was running the country during the last couple of years of what we've gone through, would have been looked at, scrutinized through the eye of a needle and gone, wow, you guys done a terrible job, because it's just been such a horrific time for the last couple of years, I think. And I'm not, I'm a fence sitter 100%, but I just think it's the job nobody would have wanted,
No. I think you're absolutely right. It's one of those, nightmarish kind of
scenarios
that we've all had to live through.
Yeah.
But look, it's also easy for me to sit here and say, we could have done it better. But I honestly believe that is the case, and I'm happy to elaborate on that again, during the next couple of hours.
Yeah. But I think it's just one of those things, isn't it? It's a job that no one would have wanted, having to kind of navigate through all that stuff.
I never would have put my hand up for it.
No, sheesh. Who'd like to look after COVID? Put your hands up.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
Right.
And everything else that's gone on as well. But I mean, especially COVID's the big one, the big elephant in the room.
Oh, totally. I think one of the biggest things, challenges in my mind that could have been done better is just a lot more transparency, a lot more communication.
Right.
Just all round.
Yeah.
That to me is one of the things that sticks out the most, because in a healthy democracy, that has to be, number one.
Yeah.
And again, happy to elaborate on that moving forward. But anyway.
Yeah, cool. No worries. And how's the week been for you? What sort of things you've been up to this week?
Certainly. Look, we've been, out and about at the polling booths, meeting and greeting people, taking my 3 seconds with each voter to sort of try and explain as briefly as I can what we're about, why I'm even there at all.
Yep.
In a nutshell, I'll do my 3 second spiel.
Sure.
It's probably more like 10 seconds for the benefit of your listeners.
Yeah, no worries.
Essentially, I just basically hand over my how to vote card and I point to the name, and I say, well, that's the name to remember. Point to the party and say that's the party to remember, which is the Australian Federation Party.
Yep.
And the reason it's a party to remember is because it is the only party that makes its candidates sign a contract where we have to vote in line with the electorate, not in line with what I want or what the party wants, but what you want.
Yeah, right.
So help me to help you.
Okay.
And there it is.
Yeah, good. Nice. Do you think, does it seem like there's a lot of people voting early this year?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
In fact, I've got, obviously, I'm there with other punters who have been around for some up to 30 years.
Yeah, right.
They're telling me that this time around is really, really interesting. They're not only voting early, but the amount of people who are just walking in without taking any how to vote cards.
Wow. Okay. They know what they're doing.
They know what they want to do. And by the looks looks of the polls, not in the favour of the majors.
Yeah, right. Okay. Interesting times.
Totally. Look, I think, without, giving the whole show away before we even got into 5 minutes, I think it will definitely be a shift. I don't know that it'll go as far as neither of the majors getting in.
Yeah.
But it'll definitely give them a scare, if nothing else.
Yeah, right. Well, that's good. A shake-up is a good thing, isn't it?
I mean, personally, myself and all the other minor parties, which includes, UAP, and, all of the other smaller parties, would love to see the majors benched, actually.
Yeah, right.
And the reason for that is because, just touching at this point, is because they've lost their way, we believe. They're no longer representing. If you go back to where they started, what they represented when they started, that's no longer true.
Yeah, right.
And they really need to go back and do some soul searching and find themselves again. I think, as you say, a little bit of a shake-up is always a good thing. And the biggest thing, I think, is that Australians also need to, and your listeners also need to understand that there's nothing wrong with doing that, with shaking things up a little bit.
Yeah.
Because there's around 2.2 million public servants who basically run government, who are the backbone of government, and run things. You do most of the work.
Yeah.
That all the services will continue regardless of who actually wins on Saturday.
Yeah.
So therefore, if that wasn't the case, every time we went from Liberal to Labor or anyone else, things would fall apart. But they don't, obviously. And that's because we've got such an awesome body of people who are just keeping things ticking in the background.
Yeah, yeah. Ah, very interesting. See, I don't know a lot about this sort of stuff, so I find it interesting. Can I ask you a question? How long have the minor parties been around? I mean, have they always been in the background? Like, have they always been there, or is it? It seems like it had been Labor and Liberal, like just the two of them, for a very, very long time, with a stranglehold, pretty much,
No, that's an awesome question. I mean, even Pauline Hanson's One Nation Party is a minor party.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
He's been around for how long?
Yeah.
The Liberal Democrats, they're a minor party, even though they've been around for 20 years.
Yeah.
And so forth and so on. But it is a really good question because, and you'd be mistaken for thinking that. If you just came into Australia, and in fact probably most Australians who have been here all their life, would be excused for thinking there is only Liberal and Labor.
Yeah, you really only have two choices, yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, if you look at the debates, the main debates, who's there?
Yeah,
only
of course.
Red or blue. If you look at all the polling, they get mentioned, the minor parties get mentioned as other, or the bottom there somewhere, but generally everything is split into red or blue.
Yeah.
And I think that doesn't really do anyone any favours. I mean, to me, that's the other thing which has really been interesting, because this is the first time I'm running, as I said, but it's allowed me to look at things from a different perspective, and it's become really stark that how biased the whole thing is from A to Z. I mean, look, the reality is they've got the $20 to $25 million each, the parties to spend on advertising and what have you. So it makes sense that media would go that way, other than community radio stations like yourself. So thank you. But what I'm saying is, it just makes total sense that you'd go where the money is. However, I think it does our democracy in Australia a disservice to actually focus on only the red and blue.
Yeah. I was counting last night when I was watching TV, and every ad break, there was the red or blue commercial, and sometimes you even got two of the same one. I actually saw at one stage I saw three, the same one repeated 3 times in one commercial break. I was like, wow, really?
Wow.
Sheesh.
It's actually had enough money to do anything is UAP and Clive Palmer.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Yeah, he's been throwing it around. Yeah.
In fact, I was initially going to vote for him because he was the only punter who had a chance, in my mind,
Yeah.
to actually, stand up to the big boys.
Yeah.
However, I'm really grateful that the Australian Federation Party came along and showed me in a different way, what they stand for, which we'll obviously get into.
Yeah.
Because it definitely aligns with my belief systems and core values. But more importantly to me is it puts sovereignty back into people's hands.
Mm. Yeah, right.
And the power back into the people's hands.
Mm. Well, that's a good thing. It's an important thing.
Well, let's put it this way. I mean, we call ourselves a representative democracy.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about those words for a moment, because we have a parliamentary democracy, which is obviously where they vote in Parliament for different bills and what have you.
Mm.
Right? But we also call ourselves a representative democracy, which means that every 3 years we forego our rights. We give our vote to a representative.
Mm-hmm.
And then they are supposed to then represent us.
Yeah.
Right? But if you think about that for a moment, just more than just surface level, that requires that representative that we've chosen, at the very least, knows us in some way, shape, or form, and ideally knows us more than less.
Mm.
Right? In other words, put simply, if you were going to put me as your representative, you would hope that I know you, and I know what you want, what your needs are.
Yeah.
Because if I don't, how can I possibly represent you?
Yeah, right.
And that makes total sense when put that way. However, forever we've accepted this non-representation. Now, I'm not saying every politician is that way, and I put out a poll on Twitter recently asking people to respond with either they've never heard from their poly, they've heard from their poly once in the last 3 years, or they've heard from their poly 2 or more times since the last election.
Mm.
And 84% came back with they had never heard from their poly.
Yeah, right.
Hey, that's not representative democracy. That's just a disgrace, actually.
Mm.
And essentially, that's more fundamental in my mind than all of these policies that we put forward. And I'll explain why. I mean, there's the only country that I'm aware of that currently represents the electorate well and fully would be Switzerland. And they have a system of what's called direct democracy. And that's where the Swiss actually vote 4 times a year on federal issues.
Okay.
And essentially they vote on everything that, has to do with their life. They have a say in everything that happens, in their life, and they can control the direction the country is going in.
Wow.
In fact, they have a policy whereby if 150,000 Swiss don't like a law, they can actually request a referendum. And if the referendum comes back at to kick out that law, get rid of the law, regardless of what that law is, guess what? They get rid of the law. Now, can you imagine living in a society where you actually could have a say in the direction that your country and your community moved in?
Yeah, right.
How
Yeah.
amazing would that be?
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Yeah. Wow.
And that's exactly what we, the Australian Federation Party, are offering for the first time in Australia.
Okay. Cool.
That's it. In a nutshell, if I had to boil it down to, brass tacks, what it is,
Yep.
there it is. That's it.
Excellent.
The other thing is some will say that I better add this one proviso.
Mm-hmm.
To create the same system as Switzerland, we would have to adjust the constitution. However, what we're talking about and what we're putting forward will not require the adjustment of the constitution in any way. All right?
Okay.
Because and look, let's not give it all away in the first 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to talk to that in more detail as we progress.
Well, Actually, I'm going to have to let you go, Pete. But I thank you very much for your time today. It's been a pleasure to speak to you, and I wish you all the best on Saturday.